Hey, all game devs. Let's look at this Max sarcophagus we've made here, and I want to talk to you about the next step to do. There's some things I did here that are pretty sloppy. That's kind of the way it works when you're figuring stuff out. There's sometimes that you have it, you've done this 42 times, and you have to, it's easy, fast, and dirty, and everything's perfect. But for sometimes when you're figuring out on multiple shapes and how best to do this, you're back and forth, and you're trying to figure out how I should do this, and the way I came through was pretty clean, but there's some stuff that I would do differently, and mainly so I can make a higher res version of this eventually in Max, not in a different program, and the methodology of going through Max, which is still a viable way. So to do that, I want to explain to you some basics about up-resing things with turbo smooth, turbo smooth and things like that. So hold on, let me hide this, and we'll look at this. So this is a cube. I've just made a cube. I've divided it 4 times. So it's 4 by 4 by 4 by 4, or 3 times, I guess. And what happens when you turbo smooth something, or when you smooth anything, and it doesn't matter which program you go to, and they all have different algorithms, but basically what it's going to do, it's going to take this edge right here and divide it into 2 and try and give you this smoothed out version of it. So if I push turbo smooth, boom, I get a new modifier right here. And then you'll see it says 1 iteration. If I go up, it'll just keep smoothing it out and adding more. But let's go back to that first one real quick. And you'll see that if I turn this on, I go back down to here, and I turn it on and off. Really, you've gone from 1 here and here and trying to find a happy subdivision to, nothing there. So the key with working with Turbo Smooth or something like this is that you need to be able to do what's called control edges, or they basically weight your edges so you don't have over smoothing. So if I wanted this to still be a box and not kind of this mushy cube, I need to do some stuff to it. I'm also going to show you in here, and I've talked a little bit about this Swift Loop. Now Swift Loop, this is up here, and for me, I think it's the standard shortcut for it, but it should be Control-Alt-D. I might have made that by default. We can look inside of Customize and we can talk about that. But let's just, assuming that you either click the button or you use a shortcut. If I use a shortcut later, just know I made a shortcut for it, or there's one for it. And what we're seeing here is that it's making this box. Now notice I'm making the box over the sides of the object and not actually over the object that's been smoothed, because I'm down in the stack. So one of the things that I'm going to do here so we can see it a little better is I'm going to go out of this. I'm going to see, there's the cage, and oh, that was weird. Huh. Oh, okay. So I guess I didn't have the sub-object on. Anyway, so if you have the sub-object on, you can see the original cube and the shape you're making. And if you scroll up and down, as long as it's on a line, it will go parallel lines to itself and cut along that line. So it's just the same as Connect. It's just a faster way to do it. Now, it's also not as precise, and you can't do 2 at a time or anything like that, but it has some other cool tools that we can use. But anyway, let's just assume we're doing a Connect right here. And it's the same difference with Swift Loop. If I cut this right here, you'll see that this side where the cut is actually on the edge. Let me turn it off so you can see I just cut this edge all the way around. And the side that I cut the edges on is harder. Let me turn off the cage here. See how it's much harder at that side? To get it to work correctly, I need to do one on this one too. And now I have an edge there, and if I come over here and do one here, and then I do one here, then I do one back here. That one may be a little bit too far. If I push Control, I can select an edge, and Alt, or select an edge that I cut and move it. So I can move it up a little bit closer. So now I've got all 4 of those edges at every side of the box except for the bottom. Let me get this bottom one here. Bonk. And if I turn off the wireframe and we go up to the final, you see that, let me unselect that bottom. That I've got smooth corners, and this is what we're looking for. Now we can do more. If I turbo smooth it again, it's still going to use those control sides, but now we won't have that kind of bend. But you see that's 2. if I look at this right here, now I've got a sharp edge. Now, what does that look like without it on there? It's perfect. This is an impossible edge. There's no such thing as an edge that ends at a vertex level, meaning that it's just perfectly sharp. You would cut your fingers off by touching it, because that is impossibly sharp. It's microscopically sharp. It's impossible. So everything in the world we have actually shows an edge shine. If you look at any of the objects around the room, there's a little bit of a bevel because we can't make things so perfectly sharp. So if we turn around, you'll see now all my sides, and I think I got the bottom, all my sides have that nice beveled edge. That's what it is when you're doing high-res stuff. You need to be able to have smooth edges. This is what makes things look more realistic. Again, this is less realistic, this is more realistic. And in the generalist terms, that's what Turbo Smooth is doing. It's softening up these edges for the cases that we want. And even on the curves, if I had a curve on this too, if I come down here and I say something like, let me pull, this side out, and I give it a little bit of a curve by putting a chamfer on it. Yeah, that's not exactly what I wanted. Let me do it this way too. I'll grab this edge. Actually, let me look at this here. I have the shortcut the same as something else. If I take this edge and I chamfer it, my brain's just here sometimes. And I take this and I scale it up so there's a further part of, and then I give it some more subdivisions. Let's give it 2 so we can see the just like if I turn this up to more, I'm going to get softer curve on it. The same thing happens with Turbo Smooth. I'm going to go back down to 2. I'm going to make this a little bit wider. I'm going to say okay, and then I'm going to deselect it and go back to final. And if we turn the cage off and we go up in the stack, you can see now that curve is beautiful. Okay, that's kind of what Turbo Smooth does. It makes things softer and it makes things more believable. It adds more resolution to it, so the map and the textures work better on it. But anyway, in a nutshell, that's what we're going to do to I said coffin, but the sarcophagus. But unfortunately, we need to do some stuff to the sarcophagus before that can happen. And that's just because I built it in a pretty fast way. But I mean, it was effective and it worked, but there's some stuff I would do differently in hindsight. But that's kind of the way the industry, that's the way you work a lot of times until you built something 24 times. It's part of the puzzle. All right, and I'll come back and we'll start cleaning up this sarcophagus, and then we'll start turbo smoothing it to give us a higher res version of it. And that's it.